the last masterclass for today, and I ask you to welcome Thomas Donato, CEO of Bosch Power Tools.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the wonderful day so far. I must say I took a lot with me, and I enjoyed all the speeches. You know, when I think about the last speech, it talked a lot about productivity in an organization, and how you can measure and create also kind of competition in an organization. That's certainly important to drive productivity in the organization. And then what I also heard today multiple times is how CEOs should look at CIOs. You know, while I'm investing also by myself money, then I often get an invitation letter from UBS and the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer, speaking to me. And this is also the way how I would look at my CIO, who's a wonderful person. And we're spending about 4% of my annual revenue in IT. When you look at Bosch globally, it's a 91 billion euro enterprise. We will be spending about 2.5 billion euros until the end of 2027 in AI. And then, of course, you know, I heard today from Mr. Glanz, you know, that a lot of people are getting the tools now, but they're not necessarily using the tools. And maybe you found yourself that you may have access to multiple AI agents, tools, etc., and you probably will need to ask yourself how often you are really using it and how strongly embedded it is in your daily work life. And I can tell you, I'm spending on my private time a lot of time and think about how I can use it in my daily work and privately. And there are a lot of things which are hindering me to do it. You know, it's the connection, accessing data, and having data available. We just talked about Workers' Council. I'm pretty sure if I would come with the idea to use your technology, I think I would have the Enterprise Workers' Council and the other Workers' Council. They would explain me whatever you tell me, that they would try to prove you wrong. Yeah? But what I'm trying to get to is, you know, from my perspective, data, and we talked today about data earlier in the EY presentation, I see it as a kind of raw material to do business. You know, data from our customers, what are the buying behaviors, how we operate, how we execute, my logistics, etc. You have data everywhere. And while I'm in Berlin here, I have to, of course, make a couple of political statements too. You know, we seem to have the ability to hinder ourselves to make business. You know, using data and making it legally easy to do it without me being in a jail with my half of my foot all the time. I would appreciate we can get to this point, and I'm probably many of you would think in the same way. So I think this is where actually I would hope that the European Union, but also the German government would help. Then we often speak about being sovereign, to have, you know, our own infrastructure. I think in a lot of applications worldwide, you know, it is not necessary because we are interconnected with almost everything, right? So, but what I'm just trying to say is we sometimes miss our own strengths in this whole debate and think about, not strongly about our own capabilities which we have in our hands. So it's just, you know, it's not related to my speech, it's more about to think about our own strengths and make them even stronger. So at Bosch Power Tools, of course, because I'm a bit nerdy and I'm an engineer, we have to have people working on AI. And I was thinking to share a bit about some concepts and some ideas. You know, one topic what is, of course, hindering us in that a lot of people using AI, they don't know exactly what it is and what can do for it for you, right? That's the big challenge. So we started a big offense of learning, training in the organization across all Bosch, and made it compulsory that people get all type of trainings to learn what AI is, how to use it, what it can do, what it shouldn't do. You know, there's certain ethical things which we want to make sure, you know, that our employees, which are deeply in AI, also comply with, because you can do things which you may, from a moral and ethical perspective, don't necessarily want to do. But there are two areas where we're typically focusing on. One is about AI productivity. How can I become more productive? You know, the just presentation which we have seen is also about, at the end of the day, become more productive. I would need also to ask the question, of course, if I have now as a CEO all the knowledge, and now instead of, I think it was around 30% being productive, I reach my 35 or 40%, what happens with the excess of capacity? And that's one of the things which you probably, many of you have seen. Now we are introducing new tools and spend more money and another tool and more things. But my bottom line gets more burden, and my IT spend is increasing. We need to think always how I can reduce this at the same time. I want to use new tools, the latest of the greatest, but it's the same with legislation. If I add a couple of new rules, I need to take some rules out. Otherwise, the business will not long-term be able to sustain. So one is basically the productivity. The other thing is, of course, and it's much harder, how do I use technology, software or AI in order to create value for the company, not on a bottom line. When I think about value, I always think about this picture. So more top line, more revenue, and less cost. And this increases my enterprise value. This is how I think about a business. So I have two cases with me, and I can tell you, I probably have 100 cases which I could use for these different categories. But what I think one thing all these cases have in common, we have about 20% of the cases are helping to increase top line, and about 80% of the cases are helping to decrease our spend, right? Making things more efficient, faster, etc. And it's so much harder to create value in terms of top line growth for a business. This is, I think, so when your CIO, the Chief Information Officer, becomes the Chief Investment Officer, when we are starting to think how I can increase the company value, the enterprise value, and increase top line for the business, then it starts to become super interesting. And this is how I look typically for my business partners. So let's go to the top line creation. This never happened to anybody of you. I'm sure that you were trying to drill a hole. So of course I'm in the power tool business. I have to once speak about a power tool, and so this gentleman. And by the way, this has been AI generated picture, but this was besides the fact. So this gentleman was drilling a hole, and oh my God, there was a water pipe in the wall. And then, of course, there are things which can help you to do your business, and this is not happening. So if you're a professional, you definitely don't want that to happen, this to happen to you, because if you make money with this, it means you have to stop your work, you have to do a lot of things, you have to deal with the insurance, etc. You can't go to your next customers where you can write the next bill. So you need to think about how this is not going to happen. And so we were thinking, okay, we have wall scanners. So this is a wall scanner, which is using radar technology. And for everybody who is a tech geek here, so we take typical signal processing, where we get all the different sample rates and of information into the microprocessor, and we can basically traditionally calculate a certain amount of data and have a certain accuracy. The problem is there's so much data that these tools are not so accurate. So what did we do is we basically created a neural network model, and which helps us to identify certain patterns more accurate. So your true and false understanding of all this data is getting better. So if you have more true statements than false, and because our model is so strong, which is embedded in the tool, it also can now start to differentiate between different materials in the wall. It helps you to create a 3D picture of your wall. You can basically look into the wall. It helps you basically to identify it's a plastic pipe, it's a water pipe. There's water in it. There's no water in it. It's a piece of wood. It's a piece of metal, etc. And it can give you some directions. Why is that important? It's not only for this gentleman who was drilling the hole in the water pipe, but also, for example, this building is probably using what we call in German Spannbeton, right? So you have certain metal in the beton, in the flooring, and if you drill into it, you compromise the structure of the building. And we all don't want to be in a building where you compromise the structure, and the people who are building or making and all the ceilings, etc. So this floor has probably 1,600 holes here. You don't want to have the situation that you have a liability if you do all this work. So this is why. So it helps you to create productivity, that you know where you can drill your holes, put your HVAC, lighting, everything in the hole. But the main challenge was, how can you make it more precise, more efficient for everyone? And this is how we used AI, and it allowed to get a better outcome for our users. So this was one way to generate more revenue. And by the way, we are a market leader in that space, so our customers and users are loving it. And of course, if you're not professional, you're also invited to buy one of these. The other things, of course, we do a lot of customer service. So if a user has a problem with its tool or anything, then of course they send us a letter or an email or something. And we have to deal with hundreds of thousands of informations and data and emails per day. So that's nothing super special, if you would say. Every company has some of these things. But then we talked earlier, I think in the presentations, it starts when you have AI agents which do things on their own and they take actions on the things which are happening. So here we are enabling all our service centers worldwide, and we did this last year together with SAP. So we introduced a new functionality that was a kind of co-development with SAP, that our tool is automatically analyzing and scanning all the incoming information which we're getting into the business. So it's approximately 1.5 million emails per year, plus other calls, etc., where basically take actions immediately when we are getting this information. So in many cases, we have nobody involved. There's an automatical process where the information, the response goes out to the customer, a certain product is sent automatically to the customer, and not a human is involved. In most of our service centers, we have people who did this work, and it was for us a big issue, because independent if it's Germany or anywhere else in the world, nobody wanted to read all these emails, for example, right? So we couldn't even get the people to do the work. So you would say, okay, hey, this new thing, this AI kills jobs, but I mean, if you don't fill the jobs, you're not even killing the jobs, right? This is as a matter of fact. The other thing is our customers, the satisfaction went up significantly. We're measuring, of course, recommendation rates from our customers. How did they like their service? We have other cases where we do this also, where for example, dealers are calling us, where we're supporting them as well automatically. So this is a way where we basically do both. We're trying to increase the customer satisfaction with our customers using AI, taking automated action, if you will, and at the same time we can scale this pretty fast. So when we did the use case beginning of last year, we tried it out as a proof of concept in April last year, and last September we were live in every service center in the world, which was led by Bosch. So it was really rapid deployment, and of course, you know, there's certain functionality which is now in the SAP suite, which is helping. Talking about SAP, the other thing is when I think about to get rid of cost in the business, probably some of you are through a SAP migration process. So for my business, I spent probably accumulated 360 million euros for the transition to S/4HANA. And I would love to find a way to make this the half of the money, which it will cost me, if I could. And that's also something where businesses are getting burdened, with a lot of non-productive work. I see this, migration really as non-productive work. There was a lot of promises always, the next SAP version can do this. This next piece of software gives you this productivity. But the reality is, IT spend grows and your rest of the spend remains. And the question for me is always, in a business, if I introduce something, I need to have a business case where I do both, right? I introduce something, I spend more money. I'm willing to spend more money, even 5%, 6% on IT. But then I want to get something back for it. And that's something which I'm not getting often enough. So what is next on IT and software deployment? Of course, at Bosch Power Tools, we do embedded software engineering. We use GitHub AI and all these different type of tools. I think they are pretty common standards. We introduced all these tools also here. It has not led to a productivity gain yet. Where the productivity gain happened was basically when we started to do benchmarks how long certain processes work for other companies. And where we said, okay, team, let's now do a competition, and how can we do things faster? And but in the whole development cycle, the software development for example, a Bosch power tools like a drill driver, etc., is rather small because we have a lot of standards which we use basically and modularity, which is different, of course, with measuring technology, which we have seen, where we have more programming, teaching, learning, testing, which we have to do. What we are right now working, what is a big impact for me is, of course, I have a big sales force in the field. They go directly to users, to construction sites, and they spend a lot of time in order to capture information from a customer. They basically need to document it. They need to send an order or other information to our central department, who is then basically sending the products to a customer. This costs a lot of time. So we have now started to analyze we basically found out that they spend about 30% with the customer and 70% with administration tasks and driving and other things. And we are having now the aim to go towards 50%. And we have now a pilot where we see that it works. So people can just pick up the phone or use the AI, where they basically put in their voice message. The information is automatically propagated to CRM. The CRM is doing all the administration work and the things which are behind to do all the work which they would typically do on a computer. In this way, they can drive from one spot to another, go to the next customer, and save additional money. But this is just one use case, and the big thing is, of course, we are always looking for things which are scaling. We always can do this Zaubertrick, that you have one thing which everybody finds super cool, but that it really has a financial impact to the business is, I think, the hardest to find always the use cases which make a financial impact in such a way that you can scale it also properly. With that, I wanted to keep it open for a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas Donato. Are there questions? I see your hand there.
Hello. Maybe to the last point you have made with the expectations. What I see a lot is that businesses are having high expectations about efficiency, but also of cost cutting. How do you deal with that once you're thinking about piloting something or doing a POC for something like this?
So in general, whatever type of project or new thing we do, we want to have some type of outcome from it, right? So outcome could be, like I mentioned, we do cost cutting or other things, or it could be something which helps us to maybe touch more customers and do things which are then maybe as a leading indicator help us to reach our lagging indicator, do more revenue at the end of the day, or make more profit. And so cost cutting per se is not our business, right? It's we want to work in an optimized way. We also always typically look into the things where we have scarcity, not the right amount of resources, or we can't get the right resource to do so. This is one of our drivers very often. What I found, what we do sometimes not enough, is basically where are we already very strong and where can we make it even stronger, right? But in general, why do we look into trying to reduce spend in one space in order to be able to put it somewhere else that we can increase the value of the business? That's the whole purpose. So this is how we think about it. So basically, we do spend on one side and try to make more out of it somewhere else. It's a bit like if you make an investment, you buy a stock, SAP, it's growing really nicely. Then eventually you say, okay, now I made out of my 10,000, I made 100,000, so I take 50,000 because I put it now in NVIDIA, and NVIDIA will make me rich. That could be the approach.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands raised, so let's grab a coffee and then discuss all together. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Thanks.